Okay, one of our important steps that you need to do when you've figured out a question, and we probably skipped over that in our haste to get at the introductions, but we need to sort of have a plan of what we're going to do, how we're going to answer that question. And I'll just model that sort of with an extensive brainstorm of how we'd go about it. And I'm using the same question here. Describe at least one way that a character or individual changed in the text. Explain how this change was important to the text as a whole. And here in the first paragraph, I thought about talking about Christopher's unusual character and his reaction when he's accused of killing Wellington. And this is just in the very first part. That tells us a whole lot about his peculiar character and his challenges in dealing with people. The second paragraph, I thought I would write about how incidents, and a few quotes that would further show Christopher's character. And in the third paragraph, I talk about how all the chaos that he encounters when he figures out that his father's deceived him, and he needs to go and see his mum, that forces him to change. Now, here are a whole list of little bits and pieces that I had thought about, okay, and this is pretty much where, I get the plan from. So Haddon shows us the character. That's how he finds how he reacts when he finds Wellington, which I thought I'd use in my first paragraph. He develops that description by talking about Christopher at school and at home, and his interactions, his investigations of the dog's killing, and of course, my third paragraph where he's forced to change. So here are a few incidents that I would give as examples. Okay, he's discovered his mum's letters. He discovers his father kills Wellington. He's been deceived. He has to travel to London to see his mother. Now, over here, I've got some quotes that would be worth using in the novel. And this is a common thing in an exam. You jot down as many quotes as you can remember, and if they fit with your question and your description, they're really good to use. So Christopher talks about prime numbers. I think prime numbers are like life. Prime numbers are what is left when you've taken all the patterns away. He says this will not be a funny book. I find people confusing. And this is a different quote here, but I've sort of run them together. Sometimes the slicer is not working fast enough, but the bread keeps coming and there is a blockage. And that's his description about how his brain works. And he's getting a lot of input, such as at the start when the policeman and Mrs. Shears is yelling at him, and he starts to scream and groan and put his head on the ground, because all that sort of stuff is input, and there is a blockage. He says, I do not tell lies. And I've got this little bit at the end here that he has to change in order to go to London. And the incident at the train station in Swindon, he's trying to find his way. He goes onto the tracks because his Toby, his rat, runs onto the tracks. Someone has to rescue him. And all these people that interact with him figure out that Christopher's not a normal person. He ends up hiding in a luggage compartment next to the toilets in order to make the journey to London. So there's all sorts of little things he has to do to deal with the situation. So that's a bit of quite an extensive brainstorm, and you can use any of those examples that you need to.